Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first edition of Serving It Up. I'm Jim Hayes, alongside the constant delight Lance Lynn, and the always affable, and he's great in his own right, Kyle Gibson. And this is a podcast. You know, the truth is that the last thing the world needs is another podcast, but we're going to give it one anyway, and hopefully it will be some interesting viewing and listening for people at home. So, I'm going to get right into it, boys. Lance, I know you were looking for an opportunity. Kyle, I know you were looking for an opportunity. I'm going to start with Kyle because, as I understand it, and plus there's a bag behind you, which is a tell, Kyle Gibson wanted to pitch this season, and he will be pitching. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was one of those things that going into the off season, I still felt really good and felt like I could compete and could get hitters out, and planned on seeing what the opportunities would be like, and kind of go from there. And it was obviously a slow off season. There were some starting pitchers that signed early, but other than that, it kind of slowed down pretty quick. I get a chance to hopefully pitch here for Baltimore and reunite with some old friends and, have a little bit of fun. It's, at this point in my career, winning is important. Being in a chance where you have a chance to win. But man, it was, I was at the house a long time with the kids and, really enjoyed that time with them. And, it was tough leaving, up until, later the night that I flew out, it was tough leaving. So, that group, similar to Lance, that group means a lot to me back home. And, I'm thankful that they do what they do so I can, be able to play and have fun and enjoy my career.
Congratulations. Now, the other guy, Lance.
Thank you.
I know wants to pitch. Last time I saw you, by the way, you were trim, you were handsome, always handsome, but you're waiting for an opportunity. There was talk about maybe bullpen, Lance. Like, what's going on now?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously the bullpen thing was something that was talked about because of just my personality. Teams are like, hey, would that be something that fits? And I was like, man, be something I'd be interested in. Depends if it's the right situation, right place, something like that. That kind of never really transpired in any real significant talks with any teams. It was just kind of thrown up there and see if it was something that was possible. But every team that's still contacting me is still talking about starting. I'm kind of waiting it out to see, who needs what. Obviously, injuries unfortunately happen this time of year, and they happen the first month of the season probably more than ever, as you've seen in the years past. So I'm at a point now where it looks like I might be the last guy standing here, which I don't know if that gives me some power or if it says, hey, you're the only one left, you take it or leave it. So like Kyle talked about, the good thing that we have is we've got a family at home that we enjoy being around, and we enjoy being at home and we love it. So you don't leave unless it's worth leaving for, and I don't have anything worth leaving for yet.
I mean, that's fair. My question is, though, like last time I saw you, you were svelte and everything. How do you stay ready? Because we've seen it before. Pitchers get hurt, and at the end of spring training, someone who people thought would have interest suddenly jumps into the picture. How do you stay ready?
You try to do everything you can. It's impossible to get the extreme intensity that you get from pitching in a big league game, but you try to figure out a way to get that done as much as you can. So for me, I've been throwing live batting practice to the local junior college, John A. Logan here. They've been great. Let me come out, let me hang out with the kids, throw bullpens, talk to them, but also throw to hitters. So I've thrown multiple, I guess, live BPs, I guess you'd call it, to the junior college kids. And you try to get as much as you can. So when you do get the opportunity to go, you can kind of look at it as hey, I need 3 to 4 starts. So you try to make sure you're like, that's your idea, is like, hey, where can I be at so I can have 3 to 4 starts in a in a real game, AAA, minor league, big league camp, whatever it might might happen, so I can go on like a little mini rehab for 4 starts and be ready to go in 25, 30 days tops.
Look, I'll be honest, Lance. I don't have the exact figure. You made a lot of money as a major league pitcher. You got a beautiful painting behind you, but your internet is terrible because
Is
you
it?
keep freezing. Yeah, we're going to battle through. I mean, Kyle Gibson's in a car ready to pack up, and his internet is better than yours.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's
Well,
great.
when you live on a gravel road behind a gate where no one can find you, it's tough to get internet.
So, Kyle, the decision for you, like I know Lance Lynn is like, I saw it firsthand. He's like happy family man. I know you are too. But the opportunity to go to a place you're familiar with, Baltimore, obviously a nice young team there. How difficult is that decision for the family, for you to say, look, there's some millions on the table here. I'm going to try to grab that money while I can.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to have the career I've had and to make the money I've made. This was not about the money. This was really trying to kind of put my finger on, okay, why do I want to do this opportunity, and what here is keeping me to not go, right? Like, there's a lot of that, right? Like Lance talked about, like he's trying to find an opportunity that takes him away from his house. And, we just kind of thought, I don't know that we really thought that the Cardinals wouldn't have picked up my option. I felt like I threw the ball well and was healthy. And we were hoping to be a part of the plans, obviously, for this year, and it just didn't work out. And I think, it just was a really good opportunity to get into a locker room that I'm familiar with and to have fun. And, the kids enjoy their time in Baltimore. It wasn't easy though, Jim. There's just so many things that go into it. Even last night, like I'm in a hotel here and, I get a text from my wife, like, I've kind of been the one who's been going in with our 2-year-old and singing her the extra song and like making sure she gets settled in. And she didn't settle in last night, and so there's a lot of things like that that keep you keep your heartstrings back home. But in this case, we just felt like it was a fun opportunity for us as a family to get the chance to go back to Baltimore again and experience some of the joys of baseball that we had in 23.
It's awesome. Lance, you're a guy who I think as a player is known to have an edge. I'm just wondering, how is Lance, the guy who sometimes is not that communicative with the media, how that translates to Lance the dad? How are you different as a dad than Lance in the clubhouse, say, after a 4-2 loss? Kyle, is that a good question? Is that a good question, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. I'm interested to hear actually. I've always thought Lance was overly communicative with the media. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I wasn't around the early days. First impressions are a big deal, right, Jim?
That is true. Lance, are you a softie with the kids?
So I have to be so patient at home that I have to be short with media. That's where it's at. When you have 4 kids, they 13 down to 2, you definitely have to be patient, and you definitely have to bring a different level of understanding and loving when it comes to that. So I am probably the polar opposite person at home and off the field than I am on the field, and that's good for me. So that's the way I try to break it up. There's work Lance, and then there's off the field and at home Lance. And Kyle's seen both of them, and they're 2 totally different people, and they've got 2 totally different personalities and egos, and it makes it fun. But there might be some split personalities too, so who knows?
So you guys are veterans of many years in Major League Baseball, and I always wonder, for a veteran pitcher, spring training, and you guys don't have it this year, but in years past, like Sonny Gray has a spring training ERA of 74 this year. I don't know. But as a veteran, what are you looking for at spring training that might not be reflected by whatever your ERA is?
I'll go first. I like to give up as many runs and hits as possible in spring training. Like get them all out. I will say this: I've never seen anyone win a Cy Young in spring training or make an All Star team in spring training or anything like that. So, if you've been like for us, we've been around for a while, so we know what we're trying to get accomplished. We know what the feels are that we need to take into a season. At no point in spring training do you game plan, do you do anything of the sort that you do in a regular season, except for I'm getting my pitch count where it needs to be. I'm working on the pitches that I don't like at this moment or the movements that I don't like and or the pitch that I'm really trying to make something that's going to be productive this year. So everybody's different. Everybody has a different flow in spring. But if you've been around for a while, you know, hey, I need this pitch and this pitch where it's at, and then I'm developing these ones, and I don't really care what else happens.
Yeah, I think there's been a few times in spring training where I've come in with a plan of, like, for instance, 2021, throwing a cutter for the first time. My goal was to throw as many cutters to as many hitters as I could, just so that I can kind of see where it played, where the harder hit balls are, where's the weak contact, where's the swing and miss. I did that a lot with my sweeper going into 2023. And it's, yeah, I think a lot less about results and really kind of diving into, okay, am I executing these pitches? How's my feel for my changeup? Um, is my delivery in a spot here when I leave spring training that where I want it to be? Um, arm strength wise, I think it's, for being in the Midwest, all winter, I play catch with my Durathrow. Like, do I feel like I'm getting enough long toss in right now to really kind of get everything stretched out and ready to go? Um, and thankfully, it's been quite a few years since I've battled for a starting position. So, those can be nerve-wracking times because results absolutely do matter. But at the end of the day, like Lance said, I'm going up here, no idea who a lot of these hitters are, and I'm trying to really just figure out, okay, what do I want to do today on the mound? And it has a lot less about getting outs and more about what pitches do I want to use and when. There's a lot of times my time early on, I wouldn't throw a breaking ball before I threw a changeup to a hitter. So it didn't matter what the count was. If I hadn't thrown you a changeup, I wasn't throwing you a spinner. Now, the hitter didn't know that, but I knew in my head that it didn't matter if it was a strikeout count. I needed to throw my changeup. So there's a lot of those things that go on that I'm sure for fans it's probably frustrating to see Sonny giving up runs, but um, there's so many things going on. And Brian Dozier was in Lance's camp here, except he just wanted to strike out and make all outs because he said baseball does not know when it's spring training and when it's regular season, so don't use any homers because you're only going to hit so many of them in your game. So you want to use them when the regular season starts, not in spring.
So I brought up Sonny Gray because to me, spring training, and I've seen a lot of them, can either be something that can be an indicator what's going to happen, or it can be a total mirage, good or bad. So I throw it out the window too. But Sonny Gray is one of the most interesting people I've ever covered. So I'm wondering what it's like, and I'll start with you, Lance, your relationship with Sonny and just your thoughts on that guy, because there were times I saw his teammates would be, well, let's let him be. He's thinking about things because he's always thinking about things, maybe on a different level.
Definitely. He's got a different mindset than most, which is good. It's what he's figured out that's made him who he is. I got to play with Sonny in New York when he kind of started figuring all this out and kind of becoming a little bit of I call him a little bit of like a mad scientist because he's always tinkering with something. He's always got an idea that he's working on, and he's always got a plan too. So you have to let Sonny process the way Sonny wants to process. There's really no other way to say it. And he processes differently. He'll bring stuff to you. You kind of give him a little bit, and then he's got to go away, think about it, and then come back to you. So it's always fun talking to Sonny because it's like, man, I don't know if we're going to agree or disagree. But it's fun to hear both sides. And him and I've always had great conversations. But what Sonny's done from when the first time I played with him to New York and how he's become so locked into his process and everything is truly impressive. And he's become, one of the game's best pitchers over that time too. And you applaud him for what he's figured out and how he's figured out how to do his thing.
How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking pitching with Sonny. I learned a lot from him. Even how to leverage your best pitch. How to there's so many things. I mean, it's he's he's definitely a thinker, and he's a quiet guy when he pitches. So like if you, I joked with Lance like a few times, like if you don't catch him early enough on his start day, you're not talking to him until after the game. So like you gotta kind of like get him before. But man, he cares. Like he talked to me about things, like if you ask him a question and you want his advice on something that you can do, he will dive in and he will do it. And it was fun to watch him talk to, young guys about bullpens and mound work. And he was really fun to sit and kind of, absorb some information from.
You mentioned the young guys. Who are some of the young guys that the Cardinals are taking a look at this year that really impressed you? Maybe some of the young guys who fans know who obviously they are. Cardinal fans know everything, but maybe haven't developed to that point yet.
I mean, obviously the we were both around Palante so much last year, and it's just really cool watching him kind of, I don't know. He learned some things off the field, I guess, Lance. I don't know. I mean,
What are we laughing at? Tell me what we're laughing at. Let's get a Palante.
Dre's a
no,
special.
I don't think.
Dre's a special human being. There's really no other way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's awesome, really. It's just watching his growth and how he started figuring out his process. And I think that's the best way I can put it, is that we all have to go through, all right, how does my stuff play in the big leagues? And, somebody probably told Lance that he needed to throw more breaking pitches at some point early in his career. And he said, that's not what I'm going to do right now.
Ever.
So it worked, right? Like, ever, right? And, I was always told, throw your slider more, throw your sinker more. Well, sometimes that's just not how it goes. I had to go about my processes and go about the first few years of my career figuring out how does my stuff and my delivery play in the big leagues. And I think last year for Palante, I hope that he took so much confidence from what he did, because he worked so hard in between starts, which is not easy to do. And he really did a great job of, best utilizing his stuff and his strengths. And I'm excited to watch him do it again this year.
He read, I think last count, 7 different books on the psychology of pitching. Lance, how many books have you read about that?
I've never read a book cover to cover, Jim. I'm doing just fine.
Who are the young?
And that's the thing, is Dre had to figure that out, because like Kyle was talking and alluded to, like everybody gives you ideas of what you should do, how you should do things, like how you should pitch. And then when it doesn't work, you kind of like, you're like, okay, well, but if you don't have a clue who you are and how you do things, when things don't work, you just go back to zero. He was able to kind of build as he went. So when when he had a bad game, you don't go all the way back down. He was like, okay. And we talked about it. It's like, hey, why did this not work today? And then and he'd sit with Kyle and I and be like, this is what happened. This is what happened. So next time when these situations arise, it's not that things didn't work. It's here's why they didn't work, because of the counts you were in, the situations you put yourself in, and all that. And here's how you counter that next time. And then he was able to slowly build on that, because he figured out what his groundwork was, so he can just go from there.
Dusty Blake, the pitching coach, is, boy, I get the impression that guy's buttoned down. Now, you guys are veterans, and it's, I guess, different from a hitting coach to a veteran hitter who has a resume. What was your relationship like? Start with you, Lance. Dusty Blake, and tell me some about Dusty that maybe fans don't know, because I think he's a guy, they know him, they see him visiting the mound, he does interviews and stuff. What's it like working with Dusty Blake?
I thought it was awesome. You're looking at Dusty has a person that, if you look at his resume, where he started from and where he's at today, my man's gone through it, and he's worked his tail off to get where he's at. He knows his stuff, and I think the best thing about him and stuff that Kyle and I both like kind of learned from him last year, but also we kind of helped, or I guess taught him a little bit because of the different personalities. You're talking about Sonny, myself, Kyle, Miles, Matsy. So he had 5 personalities that not one of us were the same. And I think that was also a way for him to see a way that, like, everybody has a different way of going about it. And it's like, Dusty does such a good job of preparing, doing everything he has. So anything you need from him, he has it ready for you. And then his job, and he's figured out, like, hey, this is what each guy needs and how they need it and when they need it throughout the day. And that's the thing that was awesome to see from Dusty. Every pitching coach has their different ways to do it. And they're like, we had the old school ones when Kyle and I were going up, and it was, here's how you do it. And that's it. We're not talking about anything else. Dusty is, hey, this is what you do well. This is what the hitter does well. This is how you counter it when you need something, and here's something you can go to. And then when you're in between starts, it's, hey, this was not as where it needs to be. This is where it needs to be next time. This is who we have coming up, and this is how you prepare. So he had everything covered, and he was really able to learn everyone's communication. Everybody has different keys and different communication, different terminology they use, and his ability to know all that from each pitcher was awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's something that is that's really allowing not only analytics, but it's really allowing pitching coaches who are good at it to get the best out of their players. I go back and think about, I don't know necessarily what the Cardinal way was and the Cardinal identity for pitchers, Lance, when you were coming up, but you might have had, you know, 3 guys that didn't fit that mold. Like, they tried to get you to pitch this way. This is what we're going to do. And, for Minnesota, it was pitch to contact, use the defense, keep the ball on the ground, and here we go. And most starting pitchers did that. Like, if you wanted to move through the system, that's what they taught you. So I feel like that's one thing that analytics and Dusty's really good at it is, all right, what do you do best? How are you going to help our team with what you do? I'm not going to sit here and make you throw a curveball when I don't think it's necessarily your pitch. Yeah, it works for some guys. Maybe high-low works for some guys, but not for you. So how are we going to get your stuff and make you the best version of yourself? And I think that's one reason why young guys, hopefully when they come up, they feel comfortable. But I think that's why a lot of young guys are doing well. Is it's not as much of a, this is our organizational philosophy, everybody go do it, so that when you come up, we're ready to coach you. No, Dusty, he knows what these guys are doing, throughout the system, and he's very aware of the plan for this guy at AA and for this guy at AAA. So when these guys get called up, it's a pretty cohesive approach to, oh, what, you were working on this in the minor leagues? Yep. All right, let's just keep it rolling. And it's a big deal whenever you can come up and or join a new organization, like I have a few times, and they know what you do well, and they're trying to harbor that instead of automatically trying to change you and do what the team does.
So one of the things that I find fascinating about Lance Lynn is, you mentioned the Cardinal way. He was the anti-Cardinal way as a young pitcher, and then full circle, like last year, the Cardinals loved Lance's leadership. I think they would want to have him back this year for leadership. Same with you, Kyle. And all of a sudden, the guy who railed against the Cardinal way, Lance Lynn, is a poster boy for the Cardinal way. How did that happen, Lance?
You don't know what you have until it's gone. I think there's a way that, there's a song about that or something. I don't know, but coming back and kind of seeing it come full circle with, obviously I played with Ollie in the minor leagues and Descalzo and all those guys. The Cardinal way when we were coming up wasn't this or that. It was, how do you help your team every day and how do you win games? So that's what I was taught coming up. It wasn't about the way anything else really didn't matter. It's, are you going to be a good teammate, and are you going to help your team win today, and be there for your guys? And I think that's something I was always taught. But there was a lot of other things where it's like things started happening where you couldn't show personality, you couldn't show, you couldn't have, you can't yell, you couldn't do those things, and you kind of were like, man, I feel like I'm bottled up. I think at some point in my career, I felt like I was getting bottled up a little bit, and then when you're 25 to 30 years old and you feel like you're getting bottled up, well, you're gonna lash out a little bit. There's really no other way to say it. I think today's game, and talking to Ollie before I came last year, and Kyle and I talked, is a lot of people kind of felt that way, where it's like, man, I need to figure out how to be me. Man, that's something I talked to Mason Wynn a lot about in spring training as the year went on last year. Is Mason's one of the fieriest people that there are, and I love it. You love watching him play because Mason wants to win and he wants to be great, and that's awesome. But if you tell him, hey, don't show any emotion, he's going to feel like he's going to explode. That's just the way it is. So you got to let him let it out, and then when there's time when it goes too far, you say, hey, that was a touch too far, and then you go show him it, and they see it, and they're like, yeah, you're right, and then they know that. I was always told to, hey, don't show anything, and then next thing you know, you just feel like you're going to explode at all times, and you feel like you can't be yourself, and this and that, and it made it not fun to come to the clubhouse sometimes, to be honest. And I think Ollie was trying to talk to us and talk to Kyle coming in. It's like, how do we make these guys want to come to the clubhouse, want to be good teammates, want to learn, want to win? And that's something Kyle and I, heck, this is our third team together, so we know each other very well. He's been riding my coattails since the Indiana days in high school. So we were
So
ready.
true.
We were ready to rock and ready to help these guys because Kyle and I are two
Yeah.
totally different personalities, people. We go about things totally different, but we want to win and we want to help people. And that showed the guys a lot of things. We all don't have to agree on everything, but if we want to help each other and we want to win, that's all that matters when it comes our time.
What do you think about the Cardinal
I,
way and what you saw, Kyle?
well, I mean, I think there's there's a lot of, I would say so many teams have this, like, this is what we do, right? This is how we're, teaching our minor leaguers the X way, right? Um, and culture today, I think we could probably agree, like, culture is not promoting, cohesiveness with a team. Culture is not promoting you supporting the person next to you as your coworker, and in this job arena, your competitor, right? And I think that's why in minor league baseball, it is rare to find a team that is playing together and has a good culture. And I mean, Lance can speak to this because I can't, obviously. Uh, I feel like that's probably something that was pretty consistent with the Cardinals for a long time, was that you just had teams that not only did they win, but they played together. They were there for each other, and you just don't have that. I mean, I was on quite a few bad teams in the Minnesota farm system. We just struggled through some development, and we were always shuffling around. We were never like, there wasn't ever anything that said, hey, you need to make sure you're playing for the guy next to you. And then you get to the big leagues, and now all of a sudden that's all that matters, right? So, like, it's important to teach. It's important to try and, to push that type of ideology, because that's a tough culture to create. That's a tough culture to just get people to buy into all of a sudden now when you get to the big leagues, because then they start struggling. They start looking to the right and to the left about guys taking their job, pushing them here. So, I mean, I think it's one thing that probably could be done a little bit better in some organizations, but man, these teams have a lot to think about. Like, how are we going to get our guys ready for the big leagues physically? So they probably don't necessarily think as much about, well, are they being a good teammate? Of course they want to be a good teammate. That was probably silly. But, like, of course they want to be a good teammate. But, like, are they really thinking about some of the extracurriculars that if you don't have it, when you come up to the big leagues, you're going to be isolated. And when you come up to the big leagues and you're somewhat of a more selfish player, people see that and it stands out, especially when you come onto a team that is not that way, right? Baltimore in 2023 was so much fun because it was a bunch of young guys that had played with each other all through the minor leagues, and they'd been on the same team multiple times. So, like, when somebody got called up, everybody was excited to see him. Obviously, the guy that got sent down wasn't, but, like, it was a very interesting dynamic that I really hadn't been a part of maybe my entire career. So, I think there's things like that that probably I would assume has to do with the Cardinal way. And Lance, when you were coming up through the system, was done really, really well. And, I know I noticed that in Baltimore in 23.
What was it like for you, Lance, last year? Um, you had Goldie, Arenado, you had, some high hopes for the team. And it's just been a bad stretch for Cardinals. Fans are a little ticked off, at least on social media. They go after me because I'm a rights holder and they think I'm awful. But what's it like going? I mean, you were there for a lot of success with the Cardinals, and right now it's a tough spot for the Cardinals, and they're using the word reset right now. What was it like for you going through that last year?
I think when we came in last year, the hope was to kind of get back to the old way of making the playoffs. And they thought sure enough the pitching, especially with some veteran presence, would help. And I thought we threw the ball pretty well last year. So I think when you call it a reset, it's a retool. I think in the sense of things is you got to see what you have and what you're going to build around. And I think you look at last year, right? There's some really good young players that have a lot of talent. The question is, where are they going to play? Where are they going to get their at bats? And who's going to do what? And I think as a whole, if you'd have said going into spring training last year, hey, uh, Nolan's going to only hit under 20 home runs. Goldie's going to hit under or 250 with, not 30. Gorman's going to get sent down at one point. Walker's going to get sent down at one point. Would you say, hey, we got a chance to win the division? Right? I think that's kind of the hard part when you look at all this is they are in a retool situation because they have to see if those guys are going to be everyday big leaguers and be who they want them to be and who they're capable of being. So that's the main thing is you can get mad at them all you want, but there's nothing they can do until they see if those guys are going to be big leaguers. And those guys, and if they all become everyday big leaguers like everyone thinks they are and they're talented to do it, they're going to be a good team this year. They really are. So that's the thing that's kind of crazy. And then if you look at the pitching staff, they're actually pretty deep. You're going to have Palante and McCreevy doing the 5-6 thing. If Matt stays healthy, Miles has a little bit of a bounce back ERA wise because Miles is going to make his starts and he's going to throw his innings. ERA got a little unlucky at times last year, and some things happen that were a little bit out of his control sometimes, and sometimes just happens. And then they've got a good chance to surprise people. So it's kind of a weird time when they say, "Oh, we're retooling or we're resetting." Hey, we're waiting to see who these guys are so we can take our next step because we can't do anything because they're all so young where we got to kind of see where we're at right now.
We were in the same boat for a couple years in Minnesota. And Lance, 2018, when you came in, like that was towards the tail end of it, where we had such a young core. You weren't going to block a guy like Max Kepler. You weren't going to block a guy like Byron Buxton. You were going to play Eddie Rosario. Like we had young players all over the field, and it was just like, all right, is this the year where they take the step? No, in 2018 we fell short, and I think we might have won like 80. It was probably about the same as last year. I think we won like 83 games that year. We traded 8 guys at the deadline. I have never seen that. And I think what it told us like this team was good. We just didn't put it together. Good enough that 8 players from this team are now on a playoff contender somewhere. So, yeah, I mean, I agree totally with Lance. I think, yeah, last year didn't go how we wanted it. But I think if you look at a few peripherals and you look at a few situations, it was extremely close to going from, low 70s wins to 85, 87 wins and being in the playoffs. And that sounds far-fetched probably to fans and people who just are on the outside looking in. But, man, you can go over 162 games and you can probably find 15 games where a couple plays made the difference. And if you make those plays and you win, 6 of those games, 7 more of those games, um, it's a huge difference. And, you're looking at a Cardinal team that's probably getting in the playoffs. So I know fans probably, they weren't excited with the end result, but I think that was a really good step for a lot of those players who face some struggle, because let's face it, facing struggle can be really good for you. And then some of those players like Burley, like Palante, took a step forward and really hopefully gave themselves some confidence going into this year, saying, I can really do this over the long haul. Now I'm going to kind of breathe a little bit and go do it again and take another step.
Fair enough. Now, if you're saying regional cable journalism, you could provide mediocrity and survive, for 25 years. You guys know the deal. Major League Baseball, you don't win, you're going to pay a price. It's kind of you get paid, and you're going to take the heat when things don't go well. I bring that up because I know both you guys really have a ton of respect for Ollie Marmol. Now, last couple of years, the team hasn't played up to expectations. I don't think it's necessarily Ollie's fault. I think he actually does a very good job, but he takes a lot of shrapnel from the fan base. So I'll start with you, Kyle. Just your thoughts on Ollie Marmol, the manager that you dealt with.
I thought Ollie, for as young as he is, and for I don't know his managerial and coaching experience beforehand, so I'm kind of thrown into it. I thought he handles himself really well in the face of struggle. We went through some times last year where it would have been easy to see a little bit of panic and easy to see a little bit of unrest on everybody's faces. And I think he has his coaching staff in a really good spot where they trust the players in there, they trust each other, and we're in this over 162. And I really enjoy playing for him. I think it's easy for coaches and front office to somewhat be made a scapegoat at times, but Ollie is at the mercy of those 26 to 35 players that are going to play on that team. And if that team doesn't hit or that team doesn't pitch or the starter doesn't make the pitches he needs to make, Ollie is the one who has to come up with answers and talk to the media about it. So I've seen coaches be thrown to the fire before, and I'm like, man, why are they doing it to this guy, right? Like, come talk to me. I'm the one who's had 3 bad starts in a row, and come talk to me, because all he does is he does a really good job of having his players back, and most managers do for the most part.
What do you think, Lance?
No, I thought as a whole last year, I think you saw a lot of, I'd say a lot of growth in Ollie, in that sense of, he came up through the Cardinal way, managing in the thick of the look at us Cardinal way, right? Where they wanted the whole league to know how great they were. And he was dealing with, hey, this is how we do everything. This is all that. And that's how he was taught. And that's how he was taught as a player too. So I think, like, in Ollie's mind, or like he's seeing a lot of different ways to do things and different ways to go about things and what different players need. These young guys coming up, and I think did a really good job of being like, all right, here's what I have, here's what I expect from you, and here's what I got, and I got your back. And I think that's the main thing. And you look at, okay, the last year didn't go as planned because we didn't make the playoffs, but from the year before, we were like plus 25 wins from the team that was before. So, like, if you look at that step, the steps are there for the team to get back to where they are. It's just the players that are top 100 prospects need to be top 100 prospects and play the game. And as a manager, like Kyle said, the 26 guys that you have there that day, no manager gets to pick all 26 guys. Not one manager in baseball has every guy on their 40-man that they want. I promise you that. But he does everything he can to make sure that those 26 guys have everything that they need that day to be prepared to win, and gives them the opportunity, and it's up to them to perform.
I don't know if there's 2 guys you could have on a podcast that are more old school than you two. I'm just wondering, and I'll start with you, Lance. A starting pitcher that's now 22, breaking into the major leagues. How is a starting pitcher today that's young and just starting his career different than, say, from you guys who are old school veteran starting pitchers?
Well, first things first, if you were 22 back in our day, they wouldn't even let you come up. So that's they would say, hey, what was that? I think Tony had a rule when I was coming up, like I was minor league pitcher of the year. I like punched out 17 in a playoff game. And I was like, man, do I have a chance? They're like, you have no chance. You're not coming up until you have at least 40 starts in AAA and 200 innings. So that's how you learn. You learn to lose, you learn to win, you learn to grind through a season, you learn to be miserable because AAA is absolutely miserable. And I think that's the difference now, right? You come up and you don't have to learn to be miserable in the minor leagues. You don't have to get beat down by the PCL playing 27 games straight. They get an off day every Monday now. It's ridiculous. The only thing that's bad for them is most country clubs are closed on Monday or they'd have the life. Like it is I mean, it's outrageous. But that being said, right? You had to throw 100 pitches, you had to throw at least 6 innings, and you had to make your starts every 5 days. Nowadays, these guys come up and you're like, hey, throw your best 2 pitches as hard as you can to get through 5 innings, hopefully. Like that's the difference now. So, and I think obviously by baseball and everything that they're talking about, these rules things, there's going to be some changes to that. So I think these organizations are like, all right, who's our guys that are capable of going 6 innings? And we got to start teaching them to do it, because if the rules change like Manfred once and you have to throw 6 innings or you lose your DH or this or that, it's going to come back to that old school way. Hey, you got to figure out how to get somebody out without chucking as hard as you can and trying to strike everybody out. Where's your weak contact? What's your pitch to get a quick out? Stuff like that. That's the stuff that is going to start coming back a little bit. And I was taught a long time ago, hey, you don't have to show your best stuff every time. There's nothing better than getting 3 up, 3 down by just flipping some stuff in there and not throwing the ball hard and just walking away and be like, man, I didn't show anybody anything, and I really didn't even try that inning. Let's go on to the next. But these guys max effort all the time. What do you got nothing for the guys the third time through because you showed them the whole bag of tricks right out of the gate.
All right. So what I was getting into was that if you go back to even Strasburg's time, right? Like, go back and look how they were limiting innings, and I think it's a big deal. I think, and they're going to limit innings now, just like they limited him there, but they limited him on the back end. They limited me on the back end of the year. They didn't limit me every start to 3 innings. They let me go pitch. They let me go do what I needed to do for 90 to 100 pitches. And then if I ran out of innings at the end of the year, hey, you got to 150, you did a good job. And I think that's a big deal. Like, you got to be able to let these pitchers figure out how to get outs when they don't feel their best. You got to let them figure out how to get outs when they're tired. And I think that's one thing that is a little different, is that right now, when they struggle, it's a little bit of a surprise because they're just told to, like, go throw this nasty stuff, like Lance said, throw your nasty stuff, as long as you can here. But once you get 75 pitches, you're good. So that's all you need to do here in the minor leagues. We don't want you using your innings here. Well, no, I mean, I don't know what the number was for Minnesota, but I think they wanted you to get like 400 innings in the minor leagues before you came up. And so, I mean, my first year in the minor leagues, I think I threw 150 innings. I mean, it's a full season, and, I think they shut me down with 3 or 4 starts to go, but they let me pitch. And I think that's something, you see it in the playoffs every year. You see the stat. If your starting pitcher goes 6 innings in the playoffs, you win 85% of your playoff games. That's a big deal. And I think that's going to be something that comes back, because it's definitely a winning strategy in the regular season as well, is getting your starter deep into the game and, taking every out you can away from the bullpen so that they can stay fresh for as long as
Do you
possible.
guys think when you're done pitching, eventually, I know you have the family thing, but both of y'all seem like you'd be pretty good coaches. Is that something you guys factor in? I'll start with you on that, Lance. I know you help out with the junior college near you. Is that something that you think you'd be happy doing, or that involves a lot of travel? And let's be honest, outside the manager, they don't pay a lot of money for the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think Kyle and I would both be honest with you to say that we've made way too much money to be pitching coaches in the big leagues. Just because of this simple fact that's where I respect Dusty so much. They are there, coaches are there the longest, and they get paid the least, and it's all day, and they're away from their family. They can't even half of them, can't even afford to have their families come in and stay with them during the year. They have, two different lives. So I would say for me personally, will I coach? It will be kind of when and where and how I want to do it. It's not, I will not be away from the family for 6 months out of the time, like you have to be if you're or 8 months if you're a professional coach and something like that. But if it involves like special assistant where you can go in and spend like, a series at a home ballpark or something like that, where you talk to guys and do stuff like that, that's a different story. And or for me locally, high school, and I've got two colleges. I got junior college and I've got Southern Illinois University, where I would love to, just go. For me, it's about going to talk to kids, teach them things, just watch them, help them develop and stuff like that, because that's what's fun is passing it down. Kyle and I were taught to pass it down, and we're planning on passing it down, but we got to do it our way. But we also have to be able to be there for our family as much as we possibly can, because for the last 12 to 14 years, we've been away. So it's our time to, when it is time to be done, it's our time to be there as much as possible too, but also still filling our buckets a little bit with what we've done our whole life, and that's pitch and help people learn how to pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a lot of fun over the last, I'd say 5 to 6 years. Analytics has kind of come into the game. It's been fun to figure out how to translate that into an old school pitcher's mentality and to be able to use the analytics in a way that to me makes sense, and use analytics in a way where it's not debilitating. You don't get paralysis by analysis. You can sift through and still learning, kind of like, all right, what number am I actually looking for here? Am I chasing vertical approach angle, or am I chasing induced break? Right. So I mean, I think the more I've learned about that, that's something that I will not be able to get a fix of if I'm coaching 13 or 14-year-olds, right? Like, but at the same time, I think there's probably more rewarding work when it's in that age range, because you can see light bulbs turn on. As like, man, I can do this. I can go. I just went from 65 to 75 miles an hour just by making a couple, mechanical adjustments, and that's fun. That's fun to watch kids develop a love for the game that I've had for so long. But I do think that my ideal job, uh, whenever I'm done playing, is probably clearly getting better internet and having the team send me the best internet possible, push me all the video you can push me, and let me stay a series ahead of you, and let me dive into hitters, and let me dive into how I would get them out, and how pitchers are getting them out, and going over some of the analytics stuff like that, because that still is very fun. Um, I've always kind of said, if ever I lose the fire to do my preparation, I might as well just go home, because it's a part of the game that I love. So I could see myself, when it comes to coaching or doing something at a higher level, is staying in tune with the game that way, um, because figuring out is cutter or four seamer better against a guy, and figuring out how to talk to guys like Palante about what he does and how he can do things, maybe tweak a little bit, or figuring out why Sonny does what he does. Like, that stuff is fun, and that's
See,
what
there's
I'm
some
passionate about.
opportunities like that in broadcasting, perhaps down the line, where you could do a little analytic stuff and then do a little broadcast hit. But we'll talk about that in the future. My last thing, because this is our first edition of Serving It Up, we talk old school, new school, and you guys talk about analytics and the way the game has changed. I mean, you have analytics now, you have pitch clock, you have automated strike zone. How has life, do you think, changed for pitchers and all the stuff that's now part of the game where it didn't used to be that way? I'll start with you on that, Lance.
I think you have every resource you can to either help you be great or really ruin you by doing things you're not capable of doing. So it's a weird concept. A lot of these young guys, you got to figure out what you're good at first. I think analytics for me, when it first like came, like as in, hey, here's why you're good, here's where you struggle, you struggle against lefties, and this is the pitch you get beat with more for these, certain hitters and stuff like that. I think that was the original analytics for me, and then I was able to learn, hey, don't throw that anymore, because when I was coming up, it was throw your sinker, get them out as fast as you can. That was the kind of the mindset with Dave Duncan, which it worked, but it also I gave up damage to lefties. Lefties owned my sinker, so I just stopped throwing it at times, and then I was able to reset their mind because they were looking for it. So I think that's one of the analytical things that you can get from it, and then you can also figure out how it works for everything that you have going on with all your pitch mixes and stuff like that. And when it comes to the pitch clock, originally I was like, this is just ridiculous. I got to sit here and look at like an oven timer going down every time I throw a ball. But I will say this: it's sped up the game, and I think all in all, that was one of the ones that's become really good. I still hate the extra inning runner on second. Can't stand that. I think that's like, hey, let's figure it out. And then, I mean, the pitch clock thing, if you look at it as a whole, has become pretty good. It was getting a little outrageous. The times getting in the box, the in between pitches, like all that stuff was needing a little bit of a retool. Sucks that we had to put a clock on it to do it because guys were told that they're going to get fined to do it, but it worked out well.
So we got to wrap things up. So Kyle dropped off. What did you say about Kyle? He can't go the distance. What? Oh, there he is.
Oh, I was going to have him as a 5-in diver, but he's back. He's making his last push.
I don't. This is unbelievable. My phone just
works out perfect.
Stopped. My phone says it's too hot. I'm in an air-conditioned car.
Listen, this
hey,
is. I think
if I know you, that's an iPhone 8, and it's time to get a new one. You cheapo.
That's probably true. Is it an iPhone 8? Is it an iPhone 8?
It's 11. It's nowhere. It's older than or newer than an 11. No chance.
I don't know what phone
gentlemen,
it is. All right, it's not new.
We're on like 17S. Let's go. You got a new job, buy a new phone.
My word, I have the air conditioning blowing on the back of this phone right now, trying to make sure that it doesn't overheat.
Listen, you have things to do. Lance has things to do. Boy, it looks like you're in a castle, Lance.
Yeah,
But we did get through our first edition of Serving It Up, and I hope that it's not awful. I hope the folks enjoy watching it. We're going to continue to do it all throughout baseball season. Sometimes these guys will make it. Sometimes we'll have other guys, maybe a Matt Holliday, a Matt Carpenter.
I'm free right now for a while.
But Lance is free. But Kyle, you're going to keep doing it throughout the season. You're going to be starting for the Orioles, but we will still maintain a spot in this particular podcast. So, gentlemen, thank you, and we'll see everyone next time, and hopefully it won't be awful.